Grand final week. Grand final week. Lots to talk about. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Welcome to episode 7 of Footy and Stuff. If you are new here, well, welcome. My name is Brandon. If you're not new here, you know my name. Welcome back. Lots to unpack today. As I said, prelim reviews, Brownlow reviews, trade news. We're still going to fit a quiz in because fun. And grand final preview because that's what we're all here for. So let's do it. Let's just get straight into it. The week review because we had some good prelims on the weekend. We did. Let's start with Friday night, Sydney and Port Adelaide. Let's start. Sydney started the game well. Hooray. We can see what that does for them now when it happens because it's been so long since they've done it in the fashion that they did it on Friday night. They take that 9 point lead into quarter time, and then it's just as convincing as a convincing prelim can get because they always get better after that point. Um, just unreal. You got the big three all on song: Isaac Heaney, Errol Gordon, Chad Warner, all fantastic. Joel Amadi was brilliant. 3 goals is just what you need from him going into a grand final because he's not always typically on the way he was on Friday night. So it's good. Good for the confidence. Good for the momentum to move into Saturday. It was not a good night for Port at all. Can't really ask for much in hindsight when they come up against that team in Sydney in a crunch time game like that was probably a bridge too far for the Power in the end. In their current form, I think they're going to be doing a lot of work in the off-season at the trade table this year, which we'll speak about a bit later in this episode because there's a lot of Port news coming out of this week. But yeah, fantastic win from the Swans. They continue to be the benchmark for me off the back of that, in my opinion. I mentioned those big three players. I mentioned Joel Amadi. Is there anyone else worth mentioning in terms of their performance? I'm just going to quickly hover over now. I mean, it's those three, isn't it? Chad with his 2 goals, Heaney with his 2 goals, Errol as efficient as always. It's just those three, isn't it? They're just so hard to stop. I do wonder what playing Brisbane are going to bring into Saturday to try and do that. We'll talk about that later, though, obviously, because we're going to dive into that. But yeah, Sydney, just good, aren't they? Geelong and Port Adelaide. Geelong and Port Adelaide? Geelong and Brisbane was the other game on Saturday night. Probably the best game I've watched all year, potentially. I'd have to think, but when you couple the actual game itself with the stakes and the just everything that surrounded it, just unbelievable. Ebbs and flows, momentum swings, back and forth edge of your seat footy. That last quarter was just unreal as well. 2 goals to the Lions, two to the Cats, two to the Lions again to snatch it. I could not believe it. Could not believe it. And now the Lions are going to carry so much momentum into that grand final. So much momentum. It's exactly what you want as that team in the form that they're in. Like the way that Brisbane have been this year. They struggled so badly early in the year and they've sort of built since then. So you'll want to carry as much momentum into that game. Just perfect, just perfect. Their main crop were all fantastic. Neil, Dunkley, Zorko, McCluggage, I thought they were all so good. Rayner's second half was unbelievable. Bailey and Archie were fantastic next to him. It all just seemed to fall into place brilliantly, in my opinion. Well done to the Cats for doing what they did this season, to be fair to them. I thought their forward line was fantastic the other night. Fantastic all year, pretty much, but the other night especially were very good. Henry, Cameron, Myers, Manor, they all pretty much did what they needed to do. Like they pushed to the very end. Tyson Stengel was a little bit off it, but he was brilliant all year. So maybe that's a potential difference maker in the end, Tyson Stengel, but I wouldn't blame the loss on him at all. Because that would be wrong. But yeah, terrific from the Lions and a deserved win in the end there. So well done to them. We got that out of the way very quickly. Very nice. Review. We'll preview the grand final later. But there was a Brownlow medal on Monday night that might take a little bit more unpacking than what the prelims did. So let's do that. Let's get the facts out of the way first. Patrick Cripps, absolute superstar, dominant footballer, a terrific captain, and an all-time great now. And I will stand by that. Probably was already, but that's fine. And a well-deserving dual Brownlow medalist after Monday night. I'm proud that he's the captain of my club, the club I love. And if you have any sort of moral compass, there's not really much you can say about the bloke and him as a footballer. You just can't, or you're wrong. So congratulations, Cripper, on a fantastic year. 45 votes, breaks the record, actually smashes the record into pieces, mind you. Is that a ridiculous amount of votes in the current system? Yes. Yes. Is it reflective of the actual season Cripps has had next to some of the all-time great seasons? No. Is it also relative, in my opinion, to this season in and of itself? Potentially. Because what I think is it was a season that was dominated by the individual brilliance of certain players, Cripps being one of those. Patrick Cripps played in a team that I would class as, for the majority of the season, bridging between a slightly above average and below average as a team for most portions of the year. And he was the outright dominant standout in about 20 of those 22 games for Carlton, 23 games for Carlton, however many we played this year. I don't even know how many games teams play anymore. 22. No, 23. What am I talking about? Yeah, he was the standout in about 20 of those games. I had him breaking the record, and I think anyone who had taken enough of a deep dive into the games that he played would have had him at least very close, regardless of whether he should be that close. It does not reflect the season he's had compared to a Dusty or some of the great seasons of the 90s and 80s and the early 2000s. Of course not. So people who are using that point and saying, oh, but he's not as good as Dusty was in 2017. Of course not. Of course not. But it's relative to what has happened this year, in my opinion. Does the way this count has gone now bring into question the method in which the count is decided through when some of the games where he polled were probably underwhelming ones? I look in particular to the Essendon game where I probably wouldn't have given, oh, I didn't give him any votes. I say probably. He got no votes for me in that game. And I think he got two behind Elijah Hollands. So yeah, games like that, games like the Freo game where I also gave him none, and I think he got one or two there. Did he get three there? I forget where he got what. Still would have brought him down to about 40 if he didn't get those votes that he probably should have gotten. He still would have broken the record and people would still be complaining, in my opinion. But it does bring into question the way that umpires are deciding these votes. This does also apply to Nick Dacos and a few others, though, who are getting votes that they probably shouldn't have gotten the other night. So it's happening across the league. So this is not a Patrick Cripps problem. It's not. It was even happening to Lachie Neale last year when he won it. There were so many votes there that I'd say so many. There were a few votes there that he shouldn't have gotten. And people kicked up a stink then. So it happens. So that then brings into question, how do we solve this? And Andrew Dillon has said that they're not going to do anything for now. And he's ruled out any sort of rule changes that the award could have, at least in the near future, it seems. The first one is giving stats to umpires because they can't use stats when they're giving votes. There are two sides to this suggestion. So on one hand, it's giving them stats could influence them in a sense that, say, a game like, I don't know how many votes he got for this game. I can't remember. But say a game like Nick Dacos's game against Adelaide, where he had those 41 touches and wasn't as impactful. If it were a game where they would be thinking to give 0 votes to Nick Dacos, and then they look at the stats and they go, oh, he had 41. Let's actually give him votes for that. Without realizing that they probably had the correct lens on it beforehand, and vice versa if they had the wrong view of a player and then they wanted to change it just because of looking at the stats. That might be helpful, but does it influence their thinking too much? On the other hand, does it give them that confirmation of some of the harder decisions that they have to make? Will it help them come to that final decision and make sure it's the right one? So there's two sides to it. I don't really know where I stand on that. I think I'd lean towards keeping it statless, potentially, but I don't know. I'd have to think more about it and hear more opinions about it to sort of work out all the different pros and cons of doing that. The other thing that everyone is saying, and everyone says it every year, is changing who decides the award. And this I don't understand at all. Like, why are we? Everyone else has their own award. The coaches award already exists. It's also a midfielders award, as so many people have pointed out, and that's like the whole point that everyone makes is, oh, it's a midfielders award, and the coaches award gives recognition to other players. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Yeah, sure. Jacob Wiedering might pick up three coaches' votes, or Harris Andrews might pick up five coaches' votes in a week. The top 10 are still all midfielders. I'd go as far as to say I haven't looked at the any further than the top 10 or a few under that, but I'd say the top 20 is all midfielders. Let's have a look at that. And we'll confirm that. Because if it is, it just further confirms the point. What's this? Oh, round 24. Here we go. Nick, Cripps, Heaney, Sarong, Neal, Bont, Goulden, Merritt, Warner, Butters, Treloar, Horn-Francis, Rowell, Brayshaw, Newcombe, Walsh, Anderson, McCluggage. Jeremy Cameron is the first nod midfielder on the list. And he got 16 Brownlow votes. So he's getting Brownlow votes too. 8, 12, 16. The top 18 in the coaches' award are all midfielders. I'm sorry. It's the same. It's the same. Then you look at the people say the media. Who's voting on the All Australian team? It's past players who are in the media. What is the All Australian team notorious for? Shoving midfielders into the team because they are the best players. So then who you give it to? The players. I'm sure the players MVP top 15 is all midfielders as well. I don't think we have access to that full list, but the top three was pretty similar to the rest of the awards. I'm pretty sure the top three for the players MVP was Bont, Cripps, and Heaney. So who do we then give it to? Unless you can improve the method in which the umpires are doing it, why would you change who's giving the award out? It doesn't make sense. It's the umpires award. That's the point of it. So do away with all that because that is ridiculous in my opinion. But anyway, all right. So with all that in mind, let's do the review of my votes. So to recap, my top 10, well, top 13, because I'm going to go through those three players that I had above 20 as well. To recap my top 13, we've got Cripps on 37, Nick Dacos on 36, Neil on 31, Heaney on 31, Bont on 30, Merritt on 28, Tom Green on 26, Sarong on 26, Butters 25, Goulden 24, and then just outside the top 10, Warner and Anderson on 23, and Treloar on 22. We can now review that with the actual votes, which I don't have up, so let's get those. Okay, so first I had Patrick Cripps. He did come first. I had him 8 votes lower than what he got, but still both reflective of the dominant season he's had. I think I was on the mark there. He just did pick up votes that he probably shouldn't have in the end, which pushed him a significant amount higher than what I had him, but nonetheless dominant from him. Nick Dacos had 38. I had him on 36, fairly close. Again, he was picking up a couple of games where he picked up votes where he probably shouldn't have, that pushed him above that tally. But generally, I was even more on the mark with Nick there. Next is where we get a little bit off the mark. So should we go with my ones and then say what they got? I think we do that. So Lockie Neal, I had on 31 in equal third. He finished on 22. Now, I was pretty on the mark with the start of his season, starting slow there. I think I had him on 6 votes by round 10. And by round 10 in the actual count, he had 5. So, like, fine margins. I think I might have given him a 2 voter where he had a 1. So he had a couple of 1 voters until round 9. And then late season, I just gave him a lot more votes than what he got. He had a lot of threes at the end in the last 8 games. He had 5 threes. But those 5 rounds before those last 8, I had him getting a lot more votes than what he got. He only had a couple, and I think I had a couple of threes in that period. Like, yeah, so I was just off the mark with Lachie Neale in the end. Um, Next to him on 31, I had Isaac Heaney. He had 28, so fairly close with him. They had him dropping off a lot more after the suspension. They gave him 2 threes, and that's it. Um, and I had him on a few more. Actually, no, I had him on 2 threes there. Where did we differ? Probably a little bit before the suspension there, obviously. But yeah, like, fairly close. You know what it was? It was early season. It was early season where in opening round they gave him nothing, and in round one they gave him 2, and I had him on 3 in both those games. I don't know how he got no votes in opening round. That's just baffling. So that would have really evened him out to what I had him at, almost, in the end. Next up, I had Marcus Bontempelli on 30 votes in fifth. This is where it all just derails so hard. I like there's no explanation for this in my opinion. He was getting robbed votes in games where he had like 32 touches and 2 goals and was actually visually dominant, like clearly dominant in that game. He had 19 votes. It was just votes scattered throughout. He only had 4 3-vote performances, which I think is just ridiculous. But yeah, early season just didn't pick up anything. He was on 4 votes by round 10, which I think is just so low. Like I had him on 6, 8, 10, 11 by round 10, and they had him on 4. I don't even have an explanation for why they would think that this should have. I, I'm speechless, honestly. I don't know how he's gone that low. Another player who went very low is the player I had next. Zach Merritt I had on 28 in sixth, and I've had to press show me more results to find Zach Merritt because he only had 18 votes. 4 3 voters packed together in that first 10 rounds. I think it was the stretch between round 6 and round 9, where he had 3 votes. Um, that's a lie. It's between round 5 and round 8. I think I had him on 3s in that entire stretch anyway. No, I didn't. I gave him a 2 in round 6, but it's not the point because that late season where I think he just should have picked up more votes. He had 6 votes in there in a span of like 5 weeks and then just finished the season picking up nothing. Which I think is interesting. Maybe I have a heightened view of Zach Merritt. That's something that I have to think about. But why would I when I don't like Essendon? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like they've underrated Zach Merritt massively in all respects this year. He should feel underdone for the season he's had. Sarong and Green next. I said on that podcast last week that they could both easily go higher, and they did. Granted, Tom Green only went one higher on 27, but Sarong went on 28. They both did very well. They both probably came out with vote tallies that were reflective of the years that they had, in my opinion. Sarong finishes equal fourth. Tom Green finishes sixth. And they're both fantastic. So I think I did well there. Zach Butters I had on 25 in ninth. And came, I was going to say second, third on 29. So 4 more votes than what I had him on. Again, it's fairly on the money there, in my opinion. But yeah, one onto Zach Butters. And then Errol in 10th I had on 24. And he had 25. So again, pretty close. Warner and Anderson in equal 11th. I had on 23 each. Warner had 23. No, Anderson is where this falls flat. He had 14. I think he got absolutely done dirty by the umpires this year. Like there were Gold Coast wins where he was just clearly the best on the ground. And he didn't get anything from it. And then losses where he probably should have gotten maybe 1 or 2. And he just didn't. So, I mean, look, it is what it is. And then Adam Treloar had on 22 in equal 13th. Equal 13th? Outright 13th. And he beat Marcus Bontempelli. He had 26 votes. Fantastic year from him. I think anything 3 to 4 votes either way is not too far off. So I'm pretty happy with that as well. Um, so yeah, had 13 players hitting the 20 vote mark, and in the end, 8, 12, 13 players hit the 20 vote mark. It just wasn't the 13 players I expected with Bont and Merritt and Anderson falling out. But yeah, not too bad for me. I'm pretty happy with my result. Got the winner, got the second place getter, um, and got a few in that range underneath them as well. So pretty good. So with all that done, I love the Brownlow, and I'm sad that it's done for another year, but I'm probably glad that it's done because what a whirlwind. Let's get into some news that's not Brownlow news. Trade news. Let's do that. So, lots of port stuff to get through here. Let's start with Dan Houston. He's requested that trade to Victoria finally. Um, there were obviously he said that he might have wanted to stay at Port Adelaide. Everyone thought he was going to go Victoria. No one really knew after that point which way he wanted to go. Seems he wants to go to Victoria, but he's also said that if it isn't facilitated, he is open to staying. With that in mind, Carlton and North seem to be in the box seat. North have a future first rounder that they might look to dish off that could end up in the top 5 unless they improve drastically by next year. So we'll see where that ends up. Carlton would probably look to facilitate another trade or two to get that done by the end of the trade period, but we will see there. I would love Houston at Carlton. But I guess it just depends what can get it done, what Port want, so on and so forth. Jack Lukosius has requested a trade to Port Adelaide from the Gold Coast Suns. I think this is a fantastic deal, not only for Jack, but for Port as well. If we're assuming that Charlie Dixon is on the outer as he gets on a bit, I think a 3-man combo of Lukosius, Marshall, and Georgiadis is a very good one to build around. I'm unsure what that might mean for a guy like Ollie Lord, perhaps. But also Lukosius is very versatile, like a very versatile player. Can play off half back, wing. He can play key defense probably. There isn't necessarily any guarantee that he plays that forward role. So we'll see. So we'll see. More Port news. Oh boy, if they get all these players that they need to get out for good value and they get all their pieces into place, Port are going to look very good next year. Very good if they get those pieces into place. Ivan Soldo looks to be on the way out as well. Requested a trade after a single year at the Power. Hasn't nominated a club specifically as of yet, but according to Cal Twomey, he does want to get to the Saints, and the Saints want him as well as a partner to Rowan Marshall. We'll see what they can offer St Kilda to get that done because he is contracted, of course, but another interesting one and a good player on his day. So it would be probably a very good trade for the Saints to get done to have that backup, that solid backup for Marshall, who's arguably the best ruck in the league. Now that Port news is done, we can get that out of the way. Geelong is what we're going to finish on. They have delisted a bunch of players. The 2 main ones being Gary Rowan and Brandon Parfitt, a pair of premiership players. I think necessary moves to make. Yeah, the point that their list is at now after a prelim loss, they want to get certain players moving, get some turnover happening with the players that they have. Phoenix Foster, Oscar Murdoch, Mitch Hardy, James Willis, and Emerson Jecker all see the door behind them. Add to those Tom Hawkins and Zach Tui back in their bags and retiring. There's quite a bit of turnover at Cardinia Park this offseason. They could have potentially done even more. But I think this is a good effort for them. I think it's a good effort for them. I'm interested to see who comes in. I'm sure Bailey Smith will be the absolute top of that list of players that they want to get in. But we will see. We will see. With that, that is news done. And we can ease down a bit now. And we'll do a quiz. We'll do a quiz. Okay, grand final week. So we are back with a Sporkle, a grand final themed one. And this is grand final images. Can you name the years these VFL AFL grand finals were played based on the following images? We have 30 of them. We have 5 minutes to do it. I don't know if this is one shot. As in, like, do I get one guess? And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. because that I might struggle. But we're just going to go through. I think I can skip them, so we'll see how we do. Um, let's go. Three, two, one, go. Okay, I'm not going to risk it here just to be sure. That's a losing Hawthorn grand final. We're just going to go through them. So I know this one. 2005. Nice. Oh, whoops. Skip one. Uh, Carlton and Richmond. So it could be 1982, but it feels very black and white. So I don't know if it's earlier than that. And it could be. That's 1970. Nice. That'd be 1989. Richmond and Geelong. Could be Essendon and Geelong. No, it's definitely Richmond. That's a very yellow looking black and white sash. 2004. We're slowly moving. Oh, geez. When did Angry Anderson perform at the grand final? Oh, it was in the 90s. I think it might be 1992, 91. Ah, yes, that's good. That's real good. Collingwood and North. They drew in 1977. I think it's one of those two grand finals in 77. Nice. Mick crying. So it'd be 02 or 03. I'm gonna guess it's 02. Nice. Doing good here. Bill flying over an Eagles player. So it's 92 or 94. I'm gonna say 1992. Oh wait. Okay. Okay. So I get multiple shots at it. It just doesn't come up if I get it wrong. 2010. All right. I'm pretty confident I can go through this now. 2016. Um, it's Gary. Oh, that's COVID year. 2020. Oh, that's the woman who streaked in the Carlton scarf. So that'd be 1987, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. That's cheating. So that's the 82 grand final when we beat Richmond. Okay. Oh wait. That's Wayne Harms against Collingwood. Oh, it would have been 1979. Nice. 2017 with Riewoldt and the Killers. That Sauce complaining to the umpire after Essendon kick a goal. I think it was Michael Long maybe who kicked the goal, but it was 93. Um, that's Dom Shee with the Collingwood fan in 2018. Oh, that's when they swapped jumpers with Collingwood players. So that would be in 66. That St Kilda won that flag. That's 95. That's 95. That's iconic. If you haven't seen that clip, please do watch it. I think it's Peter Dean who jumps up on the thing. Anyway, I'm wasting time. Essendon, Collingwood. Is that 1990? Yeah, nice. We got 2 minutes. We got to do this quick. Oh, God knows what that is. That could be any old. 2009. 1980, that'd be Richmond's last flag before 2017. Bombers cheer. Oh, it'd be in the 80s. 84. Nailed that first go. 2000 and 14. 12. Nice. That's Joel in 22. And now we're back. This could be anything. 1975, 72, 70. Oh, I don't know. I'll speed run that at the end. That's lethal after a loss, I think, on some shoulders. 1970 or 1980, I don't know, 2, 80, 81, 83, 84, 85. Yeah, nice. Um, yeah, that could be anything. 68, 67, 65, 66, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1960. Is this after 1970? I'm confident I can get these. This is fraudulent. 1972. There you go. We did beat them that year. That's Geelong and Richmond. Oh, I don't know what year that is. This, I feel like I could maybe recognize a couple of faces. No, I can't. But what does the cup say? Does that say 1920 something on it? Usually looking at the top of my head. I apologize. Does that say 1926? I don't know. That's definitely not the 20s. It might say 1976, actually. There you go. 1926, he reckons. North and Hawthorn. Oh, Dad could tell me. Dad could tell me this. What year they beat Hawthorn? Oh, unless Hawthorn won. I'm an idiot. 1980? 79, 78. There you go. This one is just like, oh, I don't know, take a punt. We're going to let it time out. I'm going to stop on 29 out of 30. I probably actually got like 24 because there are a couple where I just spammed digits in. 67 is the answer. It's not bad. I'll take it. I didn't get 29 out of 30. I will not accept that. Um, with any kind of moral compass, the way I got those answers. It should have been one shot. This. It should have been one shot. And if it was one shot, I probably would have gotten, yeah, like I said, 21, 22. But yeah, not bad. All right, let's get into my grand final tips. So let's do this one more time for the year. Brisbane, Hawthorn, Geelong, Port, Brisbane, Sydney, Brisbane. Okay. Won't have to do that again next week, thankfully. Um, all right. So it was the grand final I was expecting to start. I got both games right last week. That is good. Sydney and the Lions. Oh my, where do we start? Let's start with what the teams have to get right. Sydney first. They have to start this game well. We talk about their slow starts every week, and they did it perfectly last week. They started the game really well, and from there it just fell into place. It was dominant. They had the momentum to carry into those final three quarters, and they just kept Port at bay. Port are not Brisbane, to be fair. So Brisbane wouldn't necessarily let that happen. However, and Brisbane are also a team who are capable of a comeback in the way Sydney are, and capable of a late charge. However, in saying that, obviously, if Sydney were to not start this game the way they wanted to, and the way they have been starting games in the past, particularly in that back end of the year, Brisbane are going to make them pay. Brisbane are going to make them pay. Because what Brisbane have to get right is carrying the momentum into this contest. So we talked about, well, for the last 3 weeks, we talked about Brisbane's momentum, and obviously the Carlton game was the start of it, a very different game, but the way they dominated us, they just carried that belief into the rest of the final series, really. They go into the Giants game, they're down, they're able to come back, beat them. That adds extra belief, extra momentum into the team. That's what carried them through to Geelong, and that's why I picked them against Geelong. Words, but we made it. Um, and now they've done the same thing to the Cats. That end of the game where it was 2 goals to the Lions, 2 goals to the Cats, 2 goals to the Lions, and they were able to grind that out and show their quality and be able to come out the better team is going to be so huge in a game like this where it may be very similar because Sydney and Brisbane are two teams that are very capable um of having those big patches in games and having the momentum swinging either way. I think that this game is going to be like that. I think there's going to be momentum swings. There are going to be patches where Brisbane kick four in a row. There might be patches where Sydney kick four in a row. It's going to be a very difficult game to predict, in my opinion. Which leads to my prediction. I've been such a huge, I've been so huge on momentum throughout this final series. So big on momentum. And with that momentum, that would obviously lean me towards potentially Brisbane, the way I've spoken about their momentum in particular, and the way they've sort of pushed through this final series and the games they've won and the manner in which they've won those games. But the same can also be said for Sydney. Obviously, the way they won that Giants game and the belief that I spoke about and the belief that they take out of that game and that late game, believing that they can win at any given time. And then the way they've beaten Port Adelaide last week in just such dominant fashion would give them an added layer of belief that they can control games rather than have to fight them out and find those momentum patches to be able um to win games. Because they didn't have patches of momentum against Port. The whole game was just them in control, which hasn't really been the case for Sydney for quite some time. So maybe that's an extra added layer of belief that they're not always the team that has to be chasing a victory rather than holding off the opposition. I look at this game very similar to the way I look at this Port Geelong game. And the way I looked at the Port Geelong game, if anyone remembers at that time, was that I really liked what Geelong were bringing into the game. And I really liked how Geelong looked. And something was edging me towards Geelong. And the same thing's happening here, where something is edging me towards Brisbane. Like they, it just feels like that they should be winning. Not should be winning, because obviously Sydney have been what they've been this year. Fancy the grand final being the hardest game to predict all year. It's probably how it should be. We're very lucky. Much like Port and Geelong, I think it would be wrong where I tip Port in that game. It would be wrong for me to not tip Sydney here because they should be winning, in my opinion. They've been the best team all year. Obviously, they had that slump. We talk about that slump every week, but the slump is done. They're the benchmark, in my opinion. They have all their pieces in place. They're fit, they're firing, they're ready to go. Logan McDonald should play. No Oscar McInerney for Brisbane as well. I should have mentioned. Is huge. I think Darcy Fort will do fine. I think he'll do a fine job. But he probably will get beaten in there by Brodie Grundy. I just think it's Sydney's year. I just think it's Sydney's year. Something is talking to me with this Brisbane side of things. So if they win, don't be surprised. But man, it would just be wrong to not tip Sydney, I think. For me. If you want to tip Brisbane, go ahead. And I won't blame you for it. But we're gonna have fun watching this grand final. We're gonna have fun. It's gonna be a good grand final. And I think the Swans are gonna win. Um, Outside of that, what have we got to predict? Norm Smith medal. Um, it's another hard one. Six of the seven, six of the last seven norms have gone to midfielders. Bobby is obviously the outlier. I'd be backing in a midfielder in this game in particular with such dominant midfields on either side. Almost every game Sydney have played this year outside of maybe a Blakey or Papley masterclass um, or a 9-goal Joel Amati display. The best player on the ground has been Heaney, Errol, or Warren. So it's going to be one of those three. I think it'd be odd to say anyone out of those three if you've tipped Sydney. I don't know if Jared Berry goes to one of them, and vice versa. Obviously, James Jordan might go to one of the Lions mids. But if one of them gets tagged, oh, I don't know. I really don't know. I think I'm going to be safe, and I'm going to go with the player who has been their best player all year, in my opinion, and that is Isaac Heaney for the Norm Smith medal. I think it would be a fitting reward for his year. And I think if anyone's going to be able to strap the team on his back and win them the game, and obviously has that ability going forward where he can contribute on the scoreboard, he has the midfield craft down pat. So if he ends the game with 25 to 30 touches and 2 goals or a goal or whatever, in a win that he's essentially dragged them to, as he has done many weeks, I think it should be enough for Norm. And as I said, it would be a fitting reward for the year he's had, the individual year that he's had. If Brizzy were to pick up the win, I think Lachie Neale might have a James Jordan behind him. I'd be watching out for Will Ashcroft, I think, because I think that kid is fantastic. He was unbelievable against the Giants. He's had a very good back end of the year since he's come back from that ACL. And I don't think he'll get nearly as much attention in terms of a matchup as Lachie Neale, as a Josh Dunkley, as Hugh McCluggage would. So I like Will Ashcroft if Brucey were to pick up the win. But Isaac Heaney is my pick for the Norm Smith. And I'll give a prediction for first goal as well, because why not? As I said in the prediction, I think Sydney has to start the game well. I think that's important. And I think they'll do that. Um, so I think the first goal is going to go to a Sydney player to get that momentum going, and I'm gonna go with let's go with Joel. Let's go with Joel Amadi because he has to have a big game as well. I think. I think he will have a big game. So we're gonna go with Joel to kick the first goal. Just a nice stab pass from Errol Goulden maybe into his lap, and he kicks the first goal. So Joel Amadi for me. And with that, we're done with episode 7 of Footy and Stuff, a grand final preview. Enjoy the game wherever you're watching it. I think we're going to be in for an absolute cracker. Two very good teams, two teams that would be well deserving if they won this grand final. But we'll see who gets up. We'll be back to review it next week. But until then, follow the pod on Instagram and Twitter at Footy Stuff Pod. Follow me on TikTok for clips there. And other than that, please like, subscribe, follow on Spotify, give us a rating, all that stuff as per usual. And we'll be back next week. See you later.